Today I'm going to repeat explaining the Stronger. The Stronger is a social one-act play written by Swedish playwright called August Strindberg. I am always starting with the characters to give a clear vision of the play. We have three characters in this play. First, Mrs. X. She is a round character. She is Mr. Bob's wife and she keeps talking to Miss Y during all the play. She makes fun of Miss Y loyalness. Later in the play, we know she hates Miss Y, but she also admits that she changes a lot to be similar to Miss Y, and she pretends to be the stronger. The second character, Miss Y, she's also a round character of the play. Her name is Amelia and she keeps silent throughout the play. She doesn't say any word. She only listens to Miss Y. She was a lover and last fiancé of Mrs. X's husband, Mr. Bob. And the last character, Mr. Bob. Mr. Bob, Mrs. X's husband, and he is a flat character. His name is Bob and only mentioned from what Mrs. X tells Miss Y. From Mrs. X, we know he is a little man and he did not appear on the stage. We have many things in this play, like plot, climax, conflicts, setting, atmosphere, theme, irony, and images. Let's start with the plot. The plot: two ladies, Mrs. X and Miss Y, are sitting in a corner of women's cafe on a Christmas Eve. Mrs. X criticizes Miss Y for her lateness after she greeting her at the first time. For this reason, we describe Mrs. X as a round character. Then Mrs. X keeps talking and revealing memories till we know Miss Y was Mrs. X's husband's lover and last fiancé. Mrs. X tells Miss Y that she destroyed her life and she changed her. But later she says that she is the stronger in all what happened, and in the end she says she will leave the cafe to go home to make love with her husband. Second thing, climax. The climax of the play is when Mrs. X expresses the reality and tells Miss Y, I hate you, oh, how I hate you. Here, she says that she hates her and she had eaten her from inside. And she cannot keep a man's love, but she can steal it away from others. Here we can feel the weakness of Mrs. X and we can see Miss Y is the stronger. Dear students, the main question in this play, who is the stronger, Mrs. X or Miss Y? if you say Mrs. X the stronger, you have to support your answer by what do you think that Mrs. X the stronger. Or if you say Miss Y the stronger, you have to support your answer. What do you think that make Miss Y the stronger than Mrs. X? Another thing in this play, conflict. The conflict of the play. The conflict of the play is between Mrs. X will and Miss Y will. Mrs. X tries to keep other women away from her husband and fight whoever comes to her way. On the other hand, Miss Y is in love with Mrs. X's husband and she wants to gain her love. Mrs. X keep talking through the play and Miss Y doesn't say any word, but her silence and her facial expressions tell so much. At the end, and if you judging appearance, we find Miss Y the weak person, while Miss X is the stronger because she is able to keep her husband, her home, and have children, while Miss Y is lonely and sitting in the cafe. Sitting time on a Christmas Eve evening, place a corner of women's cafe. There are two small iron tables and a red worsted sofa and some chairs, and there is a half empty pair on Miss Y's table. Atmosphere, psychological study of human nature, and it is a complex social problem, hard to solve throughout the play that might create a sad, melancholic atmosphere. Theme. We have two main themes in this play. First, love. Love is something beautiful, but the play shows that it can be destructive power and it should be limited. Miss Y is in love with Mrs. X's husband and he also loves her back. Love itself is amazing feeling, but in this situation is wrong because it destroys Mrs. X's family. Second theme, giving up. We should never give ourselves up and should not change to someone else completely just because of keeping someone in our life. We should be ourselves for real and respect oneself. Changes are always good in life to get better, but not to lose yourself. Irony. We have many quotations for irony. All these quotations said by Mrs. X to Miss Y. Mrs. X the speaker and Miss Y the listener. He is really kind and he is fine little man. You should have had a man like that. Amelia, what are you laughing at? And then it is irony. From what she says, he is not kind. Mr. Bob, Mrs. Ex-husband, he is not kind and he is always angry about almost everything. Another irony is when she says, you should have had him because he was at the same time her lover. I know he is faithful to me. You see, yes, I do know. How he told me so himself. This quotation is irony. This statement is not true because Mrs. ex-husband, Mr. Bob, is a womanizer and he had a relationship with Miss Y too. And she tries to say that Miss Y is a loser and she is the winner. Another irony, wherever I was always near you. I didn't dare to be your enemy, so I became your friend. This is irony because in reality, Mrs. X hates Miss Y. We know that when Mrs. X tells Miss Y she hates you, she had it in her from inside. At the beginning, she was afraid of Miss Y because she couldn't trade her. That is why she wanted her to be near her, and that is why she says she became her friend. Another irony, poor Amelia. Do you know I am sorry for you all the same? This sentence is irony because in reality Mrs. X doesn't feel sorry for Miss Y. She knows that this woman was in love with her husband, so she doesn't really pity her. Last irony in this play, I didn't get jealous. Strange. Mrs. X says that to Miss Y when she talks at first time. She was afraid of her, so she became her friend. But Miss Y and her husband weren't friendly toward each other. But after Miss Y's engagement, Miss Y and Mrs. X husband become so friendly till she showed her real feeling. This is irony because in reality Mrs. X is jealous. Images. The last thing in this play, images. Mrs. X admits that Miss Y changed and affected her so much, and she says that Miss Y stole her soul. She mentions some images to strongly show the affection of Miss Y on Mrs. X. Mrs. X tells Miss Y that she was like a worm come to an apple that ate her from inside until all that was left the shell and a little dust. Here, Mrs. X described Miss Y like a worm come to an apple and ate her from inside. The second image in this play, Miss Y, when Mrs. X mentioned that Miss Y like a snake, that her eyes hypnotized or finished her, that is why her wings rose and moved only to drag her down. Then the last images, then she describes Miss Y as a giant crab lies under the bottom of water, ready to seize her while her feet are bonded, and the more she tries to swim, she sank to the giant crab Miss Y in the bottom of the sea. The last question in this play, why the writer uses X and Y for the character's name, not the ordinary name.